Good evening. Welcome to another edition of Sports Ball, a Baltimore Sports Collectibles podcast. Tonight, I am joined by my friend Ryan. Nice enough to jump on and talk a little NFL. We're around the midseason. Ryan, thanks for doing me the favor and jumping on.
Thank you for letting me come on. I know we've talked about this for a while, so I'm glad we can put it into action.
Well, I think the two things we do very well together is eat and talk sports. So, at least we're getting one of them right now.
Right now, but we keep talking. We were talking about it before. I am starving actually, and if we keep talking about food, we might have to cut this short. So why don't we get talking about the other
Right.
part, which is sports?
Okay, so we're roughly halfway through the NFL season, and since they went to 17 weeks, then we can't do half season anymore. So it screws up every show I've ever done. So we're going to call it midseason, and I don't want any comments and I don't want any feedback. It's midseason. So looking from a national perspective, obviously in the card business, everybody wants to buy low, sell high. So who are the big quarterbacks coming to the season? It's Burrow, it's Herbert, it's Patrick Mahomes. And then you've got guys like, Lamar. I think that, there was some questions on, where does he fall in that hierarchy? I think, Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields maybe were looked at as a notch down. But as I follow the market, it correlates with, what happens in the season. So, I want to get your impressions. I'm going to put up a chart here and, we're going to talk about some players. This is not a trick or anything. And see if we can blow this up here. Can you see that?
I can see it.
Okay. So you can see all these lines going up and down, and this is the beginning of the season. So what I want to show is now, who do we think they are? So who have you been impressed with? And let's see if that lines up with the card values.
Well, that's interesting. So obviously, if we're going to stick with what we know, Patrick Mahomes has obviously been playing to the level that whether people maybe didn't expect with Tyreek Hill, or maybe you did because Andy Reid is such a great coach and Mahomes is such a talent, that it maybe, but that value could stay the same. Josh Allen obviously is taken. If everyone thought he had the leap, he looks like the MVP front runner, maybe even over Mahomes. Had a great win in Kansas City. Joe Burrow has caught fire, and if people caught last Sunday's game, it seems his stock is continuing to rise. So I'd probably say, those three guys specifically, and guys right now that maybe their value has been on hold. I love Justin Herbert's talent, but the Chargers have been very up and down. And as much as I love Lamar Jackson, he got off to a hot start, but it hasn't been exactly what maybe Ravens fans have been hoping for recently. And that's not just for him, but if you're talking about success on the field, the Ravens have found themselves on the tough end of some tough losses, especially when holding pretty substantial leads.
So, I hadn't thought about this originally, but you brought up, Lamar. Do contracts mentally affect players at his level? I mean, is there a chance, despite what he says, that, you have a bad game, and until you have that first bad game, it doesn't creep in? And then you start wondering, how much was that guarantee? And then one more game. And how much was that guarantee? And I just wonder, is there a human side to that? Or do you think he really can separate that?
I think he probably separated, but it's naive to think that there isn't any type of stress on him because he's human. And as much as we can say that you are not aware of the outside noise, everyone is aware of Lamar's contract situation. They understand that he wants a fully guaranteed contract. And for whatever all the good things that happened to start the year, and now it's dealing with the negativity. And usually, even if Lamar plays well, just like specifically against the Dolphins, if the team loses, a lot more blame is going to go on the quarterback, even though that game wasn't. But if you account for the other games against the Bills, I don't believe they scored in the second half. And then you let a game against the Giants in the last 5 minutes, his mistakes were magnified. Now, was it solely his fault? Absolutely not. It's a team effort. But that does go into it. And I think at times then Lamar could feel that he has to be Superman. So whether or not that's specifically on this contract, that can be up for grabs, but there's definitely got to be some sort of element that is in the back of his head that he's playing for more than just the championship this season.
I think you're absolutely correct. So let's see if we can take a look at who these quarterbacks are and what has happened so far this year. And guys, I am very good at sports cards and I'm very bad at software, so bear with me. All right. So Ryan, you see Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, and Justin Fields.
Jalen Hurts. That was the one I was blanking. How could I forget him?
And I'm going to admit I absolutely forgot Josh Allen, and we're just going to admit Josh Allen's good, and we'll move on. And that way, I didn't make a mistake. So I picked for card fans out there. I picked everybody's rookie Prism Silver in a PSA 9 just to compare apples to apples. Mm-hmm. So they have different rookie years, but this will give you an idea apples to apples. So if we look at the beginning of the year, everybody's kind of on the same pattern here. But who's the yellow line?
Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts.
And that makes complete sense. Honestly, like looking at it, that makes complete sense because why? He is on currently the best team in football, the last undefeated team. And it has been a big reason of that is Jalen Hurts' next step that he's taken.
And here's the question. When you have guys like Patrick Mahomes, he's done it. What else can he do at this point to add value to his, I don't want to say legacy because he's relatively young, but, if he were a stock, you would say he's a blue chip stock. He's at a high price right now. I think Jalen Hurts is one of the guys that has the most to gain this year.
I couldn't agree with you more. And honestly, the more looking, I just feel I can't believe I let him slip under the radar because it seems like with everything, you're right. I mean, Mahomes mentioned it before. When you play at such a high level, how much more can you accomplish? And maybe for Mahomes, as his career goes on, that could have value. But there's an expectation of his greatness. For Jalen Hurts, the verdict was not out yet on what type of quarterback we were going to see for Jalen Hurts. You had the believers that Jalen, after they made the A.J. Brown trade, and they have a good revamped offensive line, and they have some young playmakers, that everything was there for him to have success, but there was also people that thought that he would not be able to physically be a prolific or a consistent passer in the NFL. Everyone knew what he can do with his ability to run, similar to Lamar. But people even had more doubts with Jalen for whatever reasons there may be, because they didn't think he could match the same level of overall athleticism that Lamar has. So props to Jalen. It's been fun to watch him.
Well, I also think, there's so much talent around him. He almost gets lost in that division with the Cowboys. And then, to be fair, the AFC West made all the noise in the offseason with quarterbacks, and a lot of those guys have laid eggs. I mean, I did not include in this step, in this graph, Kyler Murray, left him off on purpose. I did leave off the injured guys on purpose. I don't think it's fair to compare Tua or Mac Jones.
Right.
But, what's interesting to me is the purple line. Well, who's purple? Justin Fields. So is Justin Fields really going backwards as a quarterback, or is it their system? Because I feel like in some ways he's actually growing, but the numbers, he's just not he's throwing the ball like it's 1947. It's 7 passes a game.
Well, her Fields is so interesting to me.
There you go.
Hello? Test?
We got you.
Did you lose me?
No, we got you, Ryan. We got you.
Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Sorry about that.
Nope, you're good.
Keep going?
Yep, we hear you.
All right, great. So Justin Fields, you get brought in under under an old front office, and it's a new group that comes in, new head coach, knew everything in the organization. And it felt like initially to start the season that they did not trust him to make more plays. And also as a fan and watch just identifying the Bears, it really didn't look like they gave him the arsenal around him to have success. They did not have a great, strong offensive line. receivers or pass catchers was not a strong suit for them. Besides Darnell Mooney that they already had, they didn't go out and get many players, and it seemed like they were just keeping the training wheels on him. I will be curious now, that I think his athletic ability is showing more and more each week, to your point. And last night against the Patriots, even though they ran it a ton, that was it was his most complete game of the season. He was in control of the offense. He let his legs and his arm make plays. So Fields, to me, depending on what happens moving forward, is a guy that I think is going to rise, because I think the Bears are starting to understand him, and he is starting to understand what role he is going to play.
And there's something to be said for how much lower can he really go. I mean, I think when they roll him out and they get him on the move, he's a whole different quarterback. And
Absolutely.
People should not confuse him with Lamar. He can pass from behind the line of scrimmage, but he does throw well on the run. And like you said, I think it is a new system, and making him comfortable and having the talent around him, to be honest. I mean, he did not get the talent Jalen Hurts did.
No, I mean, you look at it also, different examples in different circumstances, though. But like Marcus Mariota going to the Falcons, if you watch how much the Falcons throw the ball, it's not very much. They are a very run-heavy presence, and it's probably mostly because the Falcons might truly not want to unleash Marcus Mariota his attempts, because it kind of seems like what the Bears are trying to do, because they feel that their defense is solid enough and that they need to try to, limit their mistakes. And by limiting their mistakes, keeping the ball on the ground. And they have Montgomery and obviously Herbert. They formed a pretty good 1-2 punch. But then for Fields, how do you limit a young quarterback's mistakes and growing pains? You run the football more, but everyone thinks more it's to hide his deficiencies. But in reality, like you said, it could be the more that things go on, you're going to see that Justin Fields' athleticism and playmaking skills are really there. And one could argue that, Trey Lance got hurt, and it's unfortunate with his situation. But I think it would be a completely different conversation for Justin Fields if he had ended up with the San Francisco 49ers, because his talent alone looks like he can make an impact at the NFL level, and he is starting to, especially the last couple of weeks.
Can you imagine what he would be in that offense? I mean, that's unbelievable. But, it didn't happen. And Jimmy G
didn't.
Yeah. So more importantly, David Montgomery is on my fantasy team, so I am full support of Justin Fields not throwing the ball all season. So let's not, pick on him, and that's totally fine. Okay, real quick, let's go back. And I don't think anybody's going to surprise us here. Would you say Patrick Mahomes pretty much kind of the same you thought of him at the beginning of the season?
Yep. Honestly, I was one of the people that had zero doubts about him and the Chiefs losing Tyreek Hill, just because situation and talent. You have, to me, Andy Reid is one of the top, if not the top head coach in the NFL, knows how to scheme things well. And then you have Patrick Mahomes that can literally orchestrate anything. And so he's right where he is. And the Chiefs are going to be right in the thick of it, trying to go to another Super Bowl once again.
So the other one I find interesting is Justin Herbert. I think, and we were talking off air, he's kind of had a down year, I think, for his expectations, which is really weird, because he's not Matt Ryan. He's not going to get benched anytime soon. But if you look at his prices in green, his high point, his rookie was selling for over $500. The last sales are down to like $250. I mean, that's people with half the confidence. Is he really losing that much confidence, or were expectations ridiculous?
Well, I think it's more expectations were so high. I think of all the quarterbacks in his draft class, the fact that he came in and started, or came in because of the situation with Tyrod Taylor, and no one really expected him to come in and play that well off the get-go. And I think some people thought, well, maybe he would end up being a, quote unquote bust. And what happened is that he played so well that everyone said, well, the Dolphins made a mistake with Tua, and they magnified that. And then last year, Herbert, as far as stat wise, were great, and everyone felt like he was going to take the next step. But to keep in mind, and I don't want to say that missing players, great players, they have to work with what they have. Herbert losing Keenan Allen in week 1 did not help his situation. That's a security blanket. And Mike Williams is a very talented player, but if you're missing one of the best wide receivers, that does make a difference. I also think that the Chargers have underperformed, and part of it is they had more injuries to their defense. And again, it doesn't matter if it's injuries to the defense. It's going to be more focused on, how the quarterback, and if they're winning and losing games, they're going to look directly more towards him. So, and keep in mind, Justin Herbert did have avoided a serious injury against Kansas City, where he stayed in the game and made some miraculous throws, by the way. But so you're right. The expectation was Justin Herbert was going to rival the Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen's of the AFC. And everyone was ready to crown the Chargers as being this Super Bowl contender. And the reality is, whether it's through injuries, through coaching decisions, the Chargers aren't what people thought. But that doesn't mean that Herbert as a quarterback is anything less. That's just the circumstances that have happened so far through the first 7 weeks.
And I'll give my card fantasy gambling advice real quick. Mike Williams now also injured. So you might want to play the under on Herbert on total yards for a little while, or if you think you can buy him cheap, it might be cheaper in a week or two. So, it could be a very good buy opportunity. So same thing with Justin Fields if you believe in him long term. Now I'm the card guy. So, I have you on here because evidently you know sports. So the question is, like every other kid, talk to me growing up, sports, would you play? Did you collect cards? What were your favorite sports as a kid?
Yeah, so I loved to play as much as I could. I obviously baseball was what I ended up doing professionally for about 8 years. But growing up, big basketball guy. I played soccer, even had a few years of football thrown in. And I loved it. And as far as for card collecting, as a kid, my mom, we finally had to go through things, but I had lunch boxes full of cards because I just loved being able to open a pack and see what would happen with maybe my favorite player would pop out. Maybe even the look of the card was so exciting and so appealing. And, I can't even tell you, I felt like I probably had hundreds to thousands of baseball and football cards. Those are the main two. And then I also dove into some NBA cards as well. And so that what it was. I didn't do it for the fact of trying to see if there was value in it, financially. It was all really just because I love sports. And that was another way for me to dive into that, that type of industry. And I think though my mom can say she's probably glad that we got rid of those cards because they definitely they took up a lot of space for many years.
Well, I have half my business just for that problem, so I understand. You led me to an interesting thought. So, what was your favorite sport?
That's interesting. Well,
and I'm going to tie this into to baseball cards in a second.
Okay. Well, playing wise, man, I'll preface it with this. Baseball was a sport I could never give up. I had this tie to it that I loved as much as it stressed me out and frustrating as it was, I could never give up that sport. But the one that I loved, I could go out there and play for hours and hours on end was basketball. I love that it was, if you made a mistake, you got to move on. You got to get back on defense or vice versa. The game keeps going. And honestly, I thought in my mind for the longest time that maybe I wanted to go and play, college basketball and just go that route and just be completely done with baseball. But I will say my favorite sport to watch is football. So that's where I'm kind of stuck at because football, obviously,
as your friend, I'm going to tell you, you were not going to make the NFL.
No, and that is one, that window's come and gone, and two, I never stood a chance.
But, right, exactly.
but the NFL and football to me was so fun to watch, and basketball was my stress reliever as a player. Because let's just face it, baseball, love the sport, but man, if you think that's stress relieving, going up there and failing over 70% of the time, that's not what we call relaxing at all.
My favorite sport growing up was tennis, and I was USTA tournament tennis ranked. And I played the number one seed in a tournament one time. I was an open seed, and so it was the random. And I lost love. And the guy's coach came over to him and said, "This doesn't even count as practice. We're hitting the other court." And that's when I knew I was done playing competitive tennis. But that was my favorite sport. I had the most fun, but boy, was I done quickly. I was a much better baseball player. I played, like high school all-star level, and I played with, I don't know, if your age, but guys like Kenny Cloud that got drafted and some other guys. And, but I knew I was not that level. So I enjoyed it through some of the collecting. That was my tie-in. And whether it was the cards or, reading every article because I just wanted to, digest every piece of information of all the sports. So now, as a card collector, I mean, listen, baseball and old baseball is always going to be my favorite. I think just, for the years we grew up in Baltimore, there was no football for me for 12 years and we haven't had NBA and NHL. But my sons are totally different. So my sons are growing up NBA and NFL fans. The reason I ask you this is I'm finding more and more people, are really going that way in both the card collecting, the fandom on TV. Is baseball getting lapped that bad? I mean, should we be just buying basketball and football and moving on?
Well, that's the thing. It's the marketability for both basketball and football right now is the highest it's ever been.
Yeah.
And because at least how I look at it, and it's interesting because football is a team sport and you're wearing helmets, you're wearing all this protective gear. So you're not even sometimes seeing the face. Now, most people, they remember the quarterbacks because that's, quote unquote, the faces of the franchise. But overall, it's still everyone, they're wearing their equipment. Baseball, if you're wearing a helmet or a hat, you can still see the whole image. So it is shocking to see. But as we talked about, Mike Trout chooses not to be as the face of the game, even though he really should be and can be. So they really went to Ohtani for multiple reasons. And hopefully that's what baseball's praying for, that Ohtani is going to bring this surge back internationally, because the basketball industry has gotten so big. And between this generation of players of Stephen Curry, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, people are engaged more with the NBA because of those brands and personas. So I wouldn't say, though, just yet with the baseball, because I think, as we've known, I've also seen some very rare cards be selling for ridiculously high prices. So I wouldn't, if you're in the whole baseball world, you cannot jump ship on that, because there are some very, very big rare.
Very few people know that you and I went in to buy the $12 million Mickey Mantle together.
Yep.
We're actually 50-50 partners in that. So.
Exactly. And I took out, 8 loans, and I'll be in debt.
I had to sell my children. So, but it's a great card. It's a fantastic card.
Yeah. Got to make decisions, life decisions.
Okay, so for those people who do collect baseball cards, there's a cyclical nature to cards. The cards are always lowest in the off season and always highest, going into a season or going into a championship. So if you're into prospects, now's kind of not a bad time to be looking to buy, because people's attention, like we said, is very NBA and NHL centric right now, except for the World Series. So let's take a look at the Orioles' top prospects. And I would just be curious of your thoughts. If people are going to look, at some of these guys, who do you look at and say, yeah, they're just a little bit different in a good way?
Yeah, for me, it's the top of the list, and it's Gunnar. First and foremost, Grayson Rodriguez, I think, has a chance to be a top end starting pitcher too. The reason why I bring up Gunnar is because, let's just face it again, it's what sells, what gets people's interest. It's offensive production. And being able to put up numbers like that seems to always catch the eye. As great as it is seen, and as a baseball fan, you love seeing what Justin Verlander did, where you think it's the end of his career and he's going to win the AL Cy Young at almost 40 years old. And the Max Scherzers and the Jacob deGroms, it's awesome. But, the phenoms earlier on, Bryce Harper, Juan Soto coming after him. I played with Juan Soto, so I had that wow moment with Juan. I didn't get a chance to play with Gunnar personally. I got to be around him, though, and I had the wow moment with Gunnar. Those are the only two players where I had that, oh, man, like that you are different. And I have very high hopes for Gunnar. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Gunnar won an MVP in the next 4 years, and he's only 21 years old. Okay. That's a lot of expectation to put on him. He's going to have growing pains, but if you can see what he's fully capable of and things that he was doing at 19 and 20 years old that people, even at the peak of their career, physically do, it's him. And Oriole fans, you should be excited. If you're card collectors, that's the one you really need to circle because he's going to be great. And I am excited about Grayson Rodriguez, but again, I just think pitching doesn't carry the same value. You correct me if I'm wrong.
You were so astute. In the NFL, only quarterbacks matter on pricing 99% of the time. And the old school golden rule is never invest in pitchers till they're retired. Just because
that's interesting. I'm learning a new thing there. I did not know that aspect.
But
go ahead.
I don't want to dehumanize it, and I'm not picking on Grayson, but the percentages of injury, and just from a realistic standpoint, if you're making an investment, the injury risk for pitchers is just such a challenge. I mean, it's just so hard to make it.
It's very hard, but I will say this: as far as Grayson's stuff, his ability, his talent. He has all the ability to be a great pitcher at the big league level. Some other names, though, just looking at this that have caught my eye. Jackson Holliday was the number 1 overall pick, and it's going to take time, though. And again, high picks like that, you should expect them to eventually make the jump, but it might not be for 2, 3, maybe even 4 years. But but he has the intangibles to be that good. Colton Cowser looks like he's going to make his impact, I think, next year. But the other one that people kind of slipped on is at the bottom of that page is Heston Kjerstad. And
he took the AFL, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. And so the thing for him is that people forget how high he was drafted and how well he played before he had his heart condition. It wasn't that he physically got hurt. It wasn't that he had other ailments. He had to deal with a heart condition, and he's a pure hitter. And so I'm really excited to see him get back on track. And I think everyone got caught up in this year of, well, how is he playing? You got to keep in mind when you haven't played in a couple of years and you're facing a life situation for your health. The biggest thing is getting healthy first. If he didn't hit above 200 for the whole year, I could care less. I just wanted him to see him on the field. And then what you're seeing in the Arizona Fall League is the intangibles against some of the best prospects in baseball. So circle that name, because I think if it's not this year, I think he is going to have a chance to – his value is only going to go up in my book. And if he can get back to his form, which I don't think there's any reason why he can't, he has a chance to be a very special player.
Well, to piggyback off your comments, not a lot of people may realize Gunnar actually still has a Rookie of the Year qualification for next year. So when you talk about what a prospect can do to add value, and here's one for baseball that I'm sure you'll understand. The expectations always peak right at call-up. So It's very hard to live up to those expectations because there's an adjustment period. Yep. So time after time, you see the prospect's values peaking, right before that call up. And then, the very rare case that they hit the ground running, it usually takes a little while to come back. So the fact that Gunnar already has the time under his belt, and now he's really going into what will be his rookie season, as far as the Rookie of the Year, from the card standpoint, is very unique because we've kind of seen what he's done.
Oh yeah, I mean the thing for what's great about with Gunnar is that the fact that he got his feet wet right now, and he still qualifies. You're right, to qualify then as a Rookie of the Year candidate. only is going to increase his value, but it helps the fact that he got 30 games in the big leagues. And, I thought too with, Ryan Mountcastle had a little bit of time, and then he had his full rookie year. Yeah, Mountcastle's full rookie year was considered last year, correct? Right? Because
I think it was
so.
Two years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. Yeah.
And so, but he broke the rookie home run record for the Orioles. And so, but he had a little bit of experience to get to that point. And I think that's why it's so great for Gunnar. He's being set up for success now this next year. And also, it wasn't what I loved is he had a little bit of struggle when he came up, not a ton, but I mean, he still hit around 260. So he figured out that he had some good moments with his bad, and he still in that time frame had 12 extra base hits. So I think he's going to. The sky's the limit for him. And honestly, and I made this case with Adley. Adley is so good at so many things. That's why when a player gets called up, or for like to give more of context with it, to get to the major leagues, you need to be good at really, really good at one thing or be very good at two.
Yep.
For Adley, I didn't go for the moment of being like, wow, you're unbelievable at all these things, but I went, you are very good at a lot of things, which makes you special. You can command the pitchers behind home plate. You can call a good game. You can block well. You can find a way to get on base. You are going to be a productive hitter. Those things all add up. That's a lot of things. For Gunnar, he has similar qualities, but he has the power component that he could hit 30 plus home runs. He has.
I think the work ethic. The work ethic on both of them also plays in.
The what? I'm sorry.
The work ethic, I think, also is something that you have to acknowledge. Good to great, can be the difference. Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree, and he has that. So,
well, to your point, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm excited. I'm excited about him. One of the things I wanted to ask you is kind of real quick before we get wrapped up here. Jackson Holiday, and take this for what it's worth, is listed at 6'1", 175. Gunner's at 6'2", 210. For a player's physical growth, development, weight, power, and Jackson, being a 19-year-old high school kid, and Gunnar having those couple years in the minors, are those similar body types in a couple years to you?
Well, wherever the 6'2", 210, I don't know if Gunnar's actually that. I think he's more of like a linebacker or a football player playing baseball. That's just kind of how he looks. But, the evolution is, so Gunnar's 21 now and Jackson is just 18. So the maturity level in your body, you're going to grow more and grow into your body as it goes. And it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, Jackson could grow a couple more inches. It's possible. Some guys have a little bit of a growth spurt, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the, the 215 range when it's all said and done. But it's really going to be, I haven't seen him up close enough to see what type of how it profiles. Some guys can carry more weight because that's their body type. But I think eventually you're going to see, and which is great, and that's the exciting part of Jackson Holiday's game is all the success you're seeing him have as a hitter at such a young age to get drafted. His strength's only going to get better, and then he's going to tap in more to his power potential and be able to do more with the bat. And also that should ultimately lead to him being to increasing his range and being a better defender as well. So it's going to be very exciting to see for him. Just like Gunnar, Adley, and all the rest of the prospects, the Orioles and Orioles fans have a lot to be excited about moving forward.
Well, as somebody who goes to a lot of minor league games, I am enjoying this after many years of living through the other. My first game was '83, so I'm looking forward to getting back to what I grew up on, and couldn't be more excited to buy the cards of some of these prospects. I am not afraid to tell people that I'm buying Darrell Hernandez, and I think that there's a chance something's in there. So we'll find out down the road. Ryan, tell people where they can find you, and I know you've become kind of this social media star with your recordings now. So,
well, you are too kind. Nowhere near star, but I am a lot more active on social media now, something I never did, but mainly on Twitter and Instagram. It's just my name, Ryan Ripken. I think it's all one word. Maybe you can space it out, but I'm on there. Leave me a message. We want to talk sports, anything. I'm a friendly guy. I'd like to think so. Stop on by. I'd love to have a chat.
sports and tequila, right?
Sports and tequila, which reminds me, I need to restock on some certain tequilas as we move forward into the World Series.
I was about to say it's that time of year. We got a couple games left, and then we got that terrible off season. So I appreciate you jumping on. Thank you very much. We'll definitely look forward to having you on again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. Take care.